The year was 1977. The place was the New River Gorge region of West Virginia, a place of rugged beauty, tight-knit communities, and sometimes deep, dark secrets. This is the story of Margret Celeste Dodd, known to everyone who loved her as Margie. She was a bright, outgoing young woman who worked as a bank teller. She was just 27 years old when she vanished without a trace from a quiet roadside parking lot. 4 decades later, her disappearance was a chilling mystery. When her remains were finally found, it confirmed the community's worst fears, but it left the central, agonizing question completely unanswered. Who killed Margie Dodd? Margie's story begins not in West Virginia, but in Akron, Ohio, where she was born Margret Celeste Horan. Margaret was born on May 8, 1960. Her parents were Evelyn and John Horan. She was raised in Ohio, but her life truly began to take root when she would meet the man who would become her husband, Julian Kent Dodd. Margie married Kent on June 2, 1972. Friends and family recalled that Margie had never been happier than she was in those early years with Kent. Sadly, their joy was mixed with tragedy. In 1976, they suffered an extraordinary loss when their infant son passed away just 4 days after his birth. In an effort to build a new future, the couple purchased their first home in Shady Spring, West Virginia. Margie was enrolled in classes at Concord University and worked as a bank teller at the Cardinal State Bank in bustling Raleigh Mall in Beckley. She was very social, friendly, and known by many in the community. The day of Wednesday, September 7, 1977, started like any other. Margie attended her morning classes, then reported to work at the Cardinal State Bank. Her husband Kent stopped by around 4:30 p.m. to pick up some money and run a few errands. Margie mentioned a disturbance earlier that day, something that had left her slightly shaken. But by the time she finished her shift around 8:30 p.m., the day was winding down. Margie got into her green 1977 Chevette and headed south on Route 19 toward Shady Spring. For a reason that remains one of the greatest mysteries in this case, she did not make it home. As she approached the community of Beaver, West Virginia, Margie pulled her car into the parking lot of a closed Amoco gas station, turned off her car, and removed the keys from the ignition. Almost immediately, a second car, described by witnesses as a dirty, greenish-colored Chevy Nova or Chevelle, pulled in behind her. The detail that Margie had already turned off her car and stepped out, purse in hand, has led investigators to theorize one of two things. She either knew the driver of the second car, or the driver was successfully impersonating a police officer and pulled her over. A key witness, John Cole, was leaving his mother's house nearby with his daughter Lori. What they saw was a brief but brutal struggle. Cole reported hearing screams coming from the station and seeing a man forcing a struggling, screaming woman into the second car. Margie's purse fell onto the pavement, spilling out its contents, but the assailant simply grabbed what he could and sped away. Heading north on Route 19, back towards Beckley, the police were notified at 8:45 p.m. that Margie Dodd had vanished into the night. Police were on the scene within 15 minutes. Margie's Chevette was still there, keys gone. With her easily being identified, witness statements were crucial but extremely vague. John Cole could only describe the abductor as a tall, slender man wearing blue jeans and a dark jacket. But it was his young daughter Lori who gave the most memorable description. She told officers the man looked like her favorite TV personality, the Fonz from Happy Days. With Margie's husband Kent arriving to assist, the search was immediately massive. Troopers and Beckley police coordinated the investigation, checking every escape route, side road, logging road, and body of water in the Raleigh and Fayette counties. Over the next few weeks, more than 300 people were interviewed. An air search was conducted. Volunteers combed the dense Appalachian woods, but the search bore no results. It was as if Margie and her abductor had indeed vanished into thin air. As the days turned into weeks, the case became a media sensation, drawing attention from across the nation. With physical leads drying up, investigators turned to more unusual avenues. Police began receiving tips from psychics in Ohio, Margie's home state. Amazingly, despite not knowing each other, multiple psychics gave similar information regarding where Margie's body might be found. Their predictions were eerily corroborated by an anonymous caller who told police he had discovered a body while parked with a woman near the 4-H Lake Reservoir. One psychic even mailed the police a hand-drawn map with an X marking the exact reservoir location. An intense search involving around 500 volunteers was launched, but they found nothing. The accuracy of the leads was unsettling, but the result was a crushing disappointment. Then came the terrifying new development. On September 29th, Margie's mother Evelyn received a call at her home in Akron, Ohio. The caller, who identified himself as Joe Bob, claimed Margie was being held in West Virginia and offered to secure her release for a ransom of $10,000 to $15,000. The FBI was immediately called in. A phone tap was established and the ransom calls were traced to Akron payphones. After several correspondence, including a coded ad in the local newspaper, the Akron Beacon, a meeting was finally set for October 11, 1977. However, West Virginia law enforcement officers assisting the FBI immediately expressed concern. The caller's hillbilly dialect sounded suspiciously fake. They suspected an urban male trying to impersonate an Appalachian local, and they were right. During the exchange, an FBI agent, posing as one of Margie's uncles, met up with one of the suspected accomplices. This accomplice, known as Jimmy, was later identified as ex-convict James Williams Hendry. Hendry, from Akron, became spooked. He pulled out what turned out to be a pen, which an agent mistook for a weapon. Hendry was instantly shot and killed by a concealed FBI agent. The whole terrifying ordeal was revealed to be an extortion plot, a despicable scheme to capitalize on the Horan family's desperation. Hendry was not Margie's abductor or killer. The killer or killers of Margie Dodd were still out there. After some time, the case eventually went cold, haunting the River Gorge community for decades. In 1979, the psychics returned, claiming Margie had appeared to them, begging for help and crying that nobody cares anymore. Now, I'm not one that's super into the supernatural. I like me some ghost stories, but the ghost stories that I typically end up finding end up getting debunked. Psychics, on the other hand, have always been debunked, in my opinion. I don't know if you're familiar with the amazing James Randi, but he was a practicing magician that in the 80s, 70s, 90s, and early 2000s laid claim to debunking the claims of the supernatural and psychic ability. James Randi fascinated me when I was a young child, and he did wonderful work. He has since passed away, but he lived to a long age of over 90 years old. James Randi is definitely somebody I would recommend you check out. If you're interested in psychic ability, that kind of stuff, and you want to see some real tests where somebody without question can either do it or not do it, James put them to that test. So I would check that out. In this case specifically, cool. You know, the psychics originally had some good answers, I guess, for the police. They were asking for anything that they could get, and they answered. Coincidentally, in my opinion, they were close. But that doesn't mean that they're accurate all the time. And that's why I'm talking about James Randi here. There have been many situations where the acclaimed psychics have been debunked. So I am in no position to believe that these people are any more correct. Then, in 1993, a grim discovery was made. Hunters on Bolt Mountain in Raleigh County stumbled upon a set of skeletonized human remains. Investigators at the time, however, did not connect the remains to the missing bank teller, believing them to be belonging to another Jane Doe. The remains were stored and the case remained cold. In 2017, 40 years after her abduction, the Bolt Mountain remains were finally re-examined using advanced forensic techniques. The skeletal profile and DNA samples confirmed the Jane Doe was, at long last, Margret Margie Dodd. Margie's remains had been found, but due to the failure to identify her at the time, the critical initial crime scene investigation had been lost. She was found not far from where she was taken, likely killed shortly after the scuffle at the Amoco gas station. Despite the 2017 discovery, Margret Dodd's murder still remains unsolved, and her killer has never been brought to justice. Margie's story is a heartbreaking testament to enduring injustice. Margie would be in her mid-60s today. For her family, the pain of her disappearance and murder is compounded by the fact that the person responsible is still walking free. Margie Dodd's case is still active and still cold. If you or anyone you know has any information, no matter how small or insignificant it may be, regarding the kidnapping and murder of Margret Dodd, please contact Crime Stoppers of West Virginia. You can remain completely anonymous. Do not let Margie's killer go unpunished. Margie Dodd's case deserves justice. Just wanted to come in real quick at the end of the video. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for watching. Like I said in the video, if you have any information about this case, make sure you contact Crime Stoppers of West Virginia. If you liked what you saw in the video, make sure you like, maybe subscribe if you want to see some more, and drop a comment down below if you have any other videos like this that you might want to see in the future. Once again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.